Hello, everyone. My name is Cheryl Crooks. I am Executive Director of Cascadia International Women's Film Festival. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this panel discussion for the film Children of the Civil Rights, the documentary film that Cascadia is presenting in recognition of Juneteenth this year. And we're fortunate that we have the director, Julia Clifford, with us today, as well as participants of the actual sit-ins portrayed in the documentary film. We have Ayana Najuma and Joyce Henderson and Bill Clifford with us, who are going to talk with us today about their experiences, their thoughts of what it was like then and what they see happening now. And we also have leading the conversation, Tamika Lamison, who is the program director of the Commercial Directors Diversity Program in Los Angeles. So we're very thrilled to be able to present this important conversation, and I hope that you'll enjoy it too and let us know what you think. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your support and interest in Cascadia.
So we're really excited to have the people here from Children of the Civil Rights Movement and some freedom fighters who were really young when they were freedom fighting and have been doing so for many years. They're still freedom fighting. So I would love to, first of all, just to talk a little bit to Julia about how she learned about this incredible story and what sort of inspired her to create this film and to tell this amazing story that we all should know about, and that I think has not been, put into the world like it should. So we have this film now. So Julia, tell us about it.
Sure. I went to visit my parents on vacation, and by day 3 or 4, you're like, okay, what do we talk about? I've run out of things to talk about, so I asked my dad what his most significant moments were in his life, and he started talking about getting involved in sit-ins. So I was like, in Boston, because that's where he's from. And he said, no, Oklahoma City. That's where I grew up. He moved there when he was 22. So I was like, what? You never heard that? And he said, yeah, it was a bunch of kids. They came and did sit-ins. And it turns out I went down and did some research. And these kids did it for 6 years. Never got violent, never made the national news. And I was like, why didn't I know about that, growing up? I learned about the Greensboro, North Carolina sit-ins. But these guys were starting a year and a half before Greensboro started their sit-in. So I was amazed. So I started meeting some of the people. I think Joyce Henderson was the first person I met, and she helped me introduce all the other people that are in the film, and we made that documentary film.
Right. So I would love to hear individually from Ayana, Joyce, and Bill about your personal, can you tell me a personal experience during the sit-in that really impacted you, that you can remember? Like how did you come to it individually, and then tell me an experience that impacted you during this time. Why don't we start with you, Ayana?
I came to be involved with the sit-ins really through NAACP Youth Council. Mrs. Looper, who was our NAACP Youth Council advisor, had written a play called Brother President. And she had put together a cast of children to perform that play. Initially, the play had been, and she had been invited to take the play to New York with a modified cast, but anybody that knew her knew that she was not going to just take some children and not take others. And so there was a busload of children that went to New York City to perform the play, and I was one of those children. Going to New York, she decided that we would take the northern route going to New York and take the southern route to return. And in going the northern route, we were able to see things that we had never experienced, which in today's world would be called equitable lifestyle. We were able to stop at the bus station, which was clean. We were able to eat on the way, just a number of things we had never experienced. We got to New York City, and of course, back during the 50s, New York was pretty equitable, and so we stayed in a hotel, we ate at restaurants, and it was just something that none of us had experienced before. But coming back, we took the southern route, and all the things that we had experienced in Oklahoma City were the same things we were experiencing on the southern route. And that was all the inequities of dirty bathrooms, not being able to eat at the bus station, just everything that Jim Crow stood for. And when we got back, the children were talking amongst themselves, and I was 7 years old. So my conversation, even though I had experienced a lot, was not nearly as in depth as some of the teenagers. But Marilyn Looper Hildreth, who is Mrs. Looper's daughter, started a conversation about why is it that we saw certain things in New York that we had not experienced in Oklahoma. And that led to a conversation about doing something about it. And that was her suggestion, was to have a sit-in. What happened was, for about 2 years, almost a year and a half or two, there was conversation with the city fathers about how to make change. It wasn't like we just immediately decided to go sit in, but the city council people, the mayor, and numerous business people in Oklahoma City were not on board with that process. And that is when, at some point, after about a year and a half, we decided to choose Catch Drugstore and go there. And there were 13 children that were the first ones to go to Catch Drugstore.
All right, cool. Thank you for that. Joyce, what about you? How did you become involved? And, tell me something that really impacted you about being involved in the sit-ins. And how old were you?
Okay. I had the honor to be a student of Clara Looper. She was my history teacher at Dungee High School. And of course, she was a teacher that would bring history to life. I tell people, if you were a student in her class, excitement took place with every topic because she made it that lively. She invited all of her students to be members of the NAACP Youth Council. And some of us did that. I joined the NAACP Youth Council, and that's how I got involved. I started picketing with the group. In fact, at one time, I was the song leader of the group. She was also my cheerleading sponsor at Dungee. And at Dungee, she would make up yells that we didn't like, of course, but those yells could be the template of freedom songs that we did when we would go picket in Oklahoma City. And so at any rate, being a student of Clara Looper had an impact on my life, and I tell people, priceless. And I am so proud that she was my teacher. With that involvement, I had the opportunity to go and hear Dr. Martin Luther King deliver his I Have a Dream speech, not on the television, not on the radio, but in person. She took 2 bus loads from Oklahoma City to the March on Washington in 1963. Again, an experience that I have cherished, and we were able to see what was taking place not only in Oklahoma City, but what was taking place nationwide. You know, when you're picketing just in Oklahoma City and you don't go to other places, you kind of think you're the only ones doing it. But we discovered that at that national march, the thousands of persons at that march had the same issues that we had here in Oklahoma City.
Let me ask you a quick question on that. So what was it like to experience the MLK I Have a Dream speech and the Obama, be at the Obama inauguration? That must have been amazing. I know it's a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to know that since you.
I know, but you know, you don't take those things for granted.
Right.
Being in that, in fact, every time I see pictures of Dr. Martin Luther King delivering the speech, I'm trying to find where I was standing at that time. I also went back for the 50th anniversary of that march, tried to stand in the same area where I was 50 years before that. A chill you get. Having the opportunity to go not to one inauguration, but 2 inaugurations to see President Barack Obama. What can I say? Priceless experiences that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Now, I tell people that march in 1963 impacted my life forever. These experiences would not have occurred if it hadn't been for Clara Luper's leadership.
I was thinking about when Joyce was talking about the March on Washington. I was 7 years old. My sister was 5 when we started the sit-ins. But I should have mentioned that my mother and Clara Luper were best friends. They were like sisters. And that was why, even going to New York, you know, most people are not going to let their little children to go away with anybody at that age. But because she was like family, we were able to go to New York to do the play. And all the involvement we had, you know, was motivated by, I would say in some regards, a family connection, because she was like an aunt. I called her Aunt Clara all my life. And like Joyce, that experience in Washington was invaluable. My experience a little bit was different because I was younger than Joyce. But what I experienced from that was looking around and seeing people from different parts of the country, Black and white, but being able to realize that based upon what we had been taught, that everybody was coming here for the same reason. And that was to promote equity and equality in society. And so, like Joyce, it was an invaluable experience. I do look back on my life and say, things that I learned as a member of being in the NAACP Youth Council, not just the sit-ins, because I was in the Youth Council all the way till I got ready to go off to college and held different positions and got to experience traveling, where most children never got to travel and meet children from other places, which also gave you another perspective on how the world was in other parts of the country. And that, for me, when I look back at how we organize the sit-ins, the team building, the critical thinking, being able to experience, I say, the idea of it's not about me. I always like to use the term, the greatest good for the greatest number. And that's what the sit-in movement was about.
Gotcha. So Bill, you're gonna have the next question. And I'm gonna try and get through at least 4 or 5 more questions and get into some of this, get a little deeper into the actual sit-ins and compare it to what's going on today. So Bill, tell us how you got involved with the sit-ins, and also, if you would, because you're involved in voting rights right now, very involved in that, and I want to know what it was like, you know, being involved in the sit-ins and seeing how Jim Crow was sort of unfolding out there as far as voting rights, and what that's like now, because you're dealing with that a little bit today as well.
Yeah, I got involved basically as the quote leader unquote of a young Christian workers group. Calvin Luper came to one of our meetings and asked basically people to come down to the next session that they had at Calvary Baptist Church and march with them, sit in downtown. And I was president of that group. So I decided to go a week early and find out what it was like, kind of scout out the territory, and did, and wound up being the only white person there. And I was kind of surprised at that. Anyway, that's kind of how it happened.
Wow. Okay. And what about, like, you're doing a lot of things with voting rights right now, is my understanding. And how do you see some similarities with what's happening with the suppression of voting now and back then?
I think a lot of the suppression today is self-imposed. I think people don't feel they have a voice, so why bother? In that sense, it's self-imposed. We're trying to work with a group of organizations to see if we can't get each one to increase the number of voter participants, particularly dealing with local issues on a county by county basis, working with the Association of Community Action Agencies, the State Chamber of Commerce, several wide-ranging groups in order to try to make this happen. And focus more on what's important to people at the county level, because a lot of times the local issues get kind of overwhelmed by the state and national issues. And maybe if you can bring together a diverse group of people at the local level, ranging from the League of Women Voters to the county commissioners to the chief of police, and have them begin to put together what are the priorities they want for their local community as a totality, then maybe something might happen.
I gotcha. All right. Well, I wanted to talk to Joyce and Ayanna, and Julia, you have a perspective on this as well, about all the protesting and things that are going on right now as compared to the protesting and the sit-ins and the things that you were doing back then. I know you guys were much younger, but there's also like a very millennial young crowd who are sort of leading the charge of the protests that are happening right now as well. So I just wanted to know, you know, what is your, how do you feel about that? Do you feel some sort of connection to that? Does that, you know, inspire you? Does it remind you of what you were doing back then? And then Julia, what have you noticed the difference from the research that you've done and seen to, you know, what's happening right now?
I really feel that we laid out a template for the young people today. Back then. I say that because on many occasions I have been the guest speaker for many young people in high school. And the one question that comes up, was it legal for you all to picket back then? And I've been fortunate to have a constitution that I'm able to give them, each student in the group that I'm talking to receives a constitution. I have them to go to that First Amendment and I have them to read together the First Amendment so that they can see that you have a right to assemble and in a peaceful manner. And it has been interesting that I've received phone calls with what's going on now. They're saying, Miss Henderson, I have my Constitution. You remember when you gave us the Constitution and told us about we have a right to picket and ABC? And I feel like that's important for them to know, first of all, their constitutional rights. And that way you can stay on course. It's easy for you to get off course if you don't know the purpose of what you're doing and why you're doing, and if you have a right to do it. Those are things that are so important to me to lay out when you're confronting the issues that we are confronting today. It is interesting to see 60 plus years later, we're getting ready to celebrate the 62nd anniversary of the city and the first city in Oklahoma City, August 19, 2020. We're still discussing those same issues.
Right.
And that is really what has amazed me in this fight for freedom and equality, that we're still discussing. We're still trying to be equal in a society that is considered the United States of America, where we are citizens of the United States of America. I was a history teacher myself, and that's because of Clara Luper also. And what you try to do every moment, make it a teaching moment, so you know your history, so you can understand what's going on now, so you can progress and do better in the future. But I can honestly say that the experiences that I've had and what I see what's going on now, they are taking a page out of the history book from those of us who picketed back in those days. Okay.
What about you, Ayanna?
You know, like Joyce, I, you know, go to speak and people are asking me, well, what do you think about what's going on today? That's usually the first question. One of the things that's very different that I've been observing is, first of all, like Joyce, you're very shocked that after all these years, we're having to still walk down that road and it's still
Mhm.
going. Most of the people, if you noticed, you don't see many people that are probably over 50 at most of the marches. And when I've talked to friends about it, they said, you know, let those young people do it. I've walked that road before. Let those young people do it. But you know, we were very strategic in what we did during a particular period. That's one of the things I found in my own career as I've developed as an adult, is that I'm a strategist.
Yeah.
And we talked things through. We had a plan. Now that is something that you hear on TV, is that if you're going to move forward, you got to be very strategic. That was after the fact. Now some of the issues that are coming up were not necessarily issues that you heard people talking about with Garner or, you know, Trayvon or some of the other guys that have given their life for this cause. But you also, from our experience to now, you didn't find, I looked at a town hall meeting that the CEO of Macy's hosted for their 3,000 employees. Now you've got major corporations that are saying, you know, we'll donate, we're going to be very philanthropic, and we're going to make some changes. For me, in measuring this whole thing, it's global. It's not just, you know, a domestic situation. Is I started looking at a friend of mine said, well, you've been looking at that for a while. I started looking at how many people are of color on your corporate board. How many people are in senior executive positions that are people of color? What's happening with your HR policies? There's a long list of ways we can measure whether this whole policing issue is much bigger than just policing. And that's why I think a lot of corporations have come on board. Some people say it sounds great today because we are dealing with Mr. Floyd's situation. And even since last week when he passed, there's a young man that was shot in the back, yesterday or the day before. And so you think it's in that regard. I look at Oklahoma, when the date we set in, August 19, 1958, over the years, I thought to myself, well, you know, it's a major corporation. We said in 3 days, and then they said, yes, we'll let people eat in all of our restaurants. I kept thinking to myself, if they did it, then maybe other people will come on board. But it took 6 more years for people to have the aha moment to decide that equity and equality was important. So those are things that that I keep thinking about. The other deal is because of the virus, it's so prominent. It was like that was put on the back burner, and this became the topic of the day in terms of what's going on. I'm in the process of getting ready to launch a campaign now called Save My Life, which is around wearing the mask and doing social distancing. Because as you were getting ready to talk about what's happening here in Oklahoma in a couple of days, you know, the person that lives at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue will be coming to Tulsa, and they're going to require that people sign a form saying that if you get the virus, we are not responsible. When the health department says in Tulsa that I would suggest you don't come because it's too risky. And so in spite of the fact that all the work that Joyce and Bill and I did, there was always a protective measure around that. Even when we went to sit in, we had our own security force. That was very clear that if you had a propensity to be violent, you need to stay at home. We got something else for you to do. You know,
so we have very, very little time left. I want to ask Julia a couple of questions, and I want to get a final word from you guys. So Julia, again, what have you seen? And also if you can comment yourself on how you feel about our president coming to Oklahoma at the time that he plans to come.
Sure. What amazed me about this whole thing was that it was kids. And when I took this film around the country, I'd spent about 2 years going to different high schools and colleges, universities, and showing it. Time and again, the young people would stand up and cheer for a film, a documentary film, which was amazing to see. And it's really the young people that really step up and make change. And in a way, these guys have handed off the baton to the next generation, or this generation. And for me, it's like a pendulum where we are getting closer, and it does swing back, but each time we do get a little closer to true freedom for everyone.
Mhm.
And that's thrilling. It's hard to watch what's going on in the news today. It's confusing, but when I try to put it in perspective, that's what I use. And I love the nonviolent action. That's much more effective. The violent is, I think, a very small part that the media is making really loud.
Right.
So I'm again thrilled that we are making progress, but maybe not like, maybe messy, but we're moving forward. And as far as Trump coming into Tulsa, I'm not sure what to think about that. I'm glad that he actually moved it from June 19th to the next day. He was gracious in that.
Exactly.
Tulsa has had quite a bit of a history, and I'm not sure if he's aware of all that history yet, but I'm sure he is by now.
So there was something in the film, a woman named Ella Baker who gave a speech, More Than a Hamburger. And I wanted you to comment on that because as young people, I just wanted to know, did that speech translate to the expansive nature of what you were doing and what you were protesting for? Obviously, it was for more than just a hamburger. And I just wanted to know, did you, Joyce, and Ayana, did that impact you? Did you know it was broader than that?
I didn't know her personally, but it
And Bill as well. No, I mean,
more than yes,
the
but
actual
more than a hamburger. Yeah, was symbolic of what we were doing.
right.
And I think the death of these young men, we're dealing with their death, but it's also symbolic of other issues that we're dealing with. And the hamburger and a Coke, we would laugh and say, if they served us, we probably didn't have the money to pay for the Coke or the hamburger at the time. But it was symbolic of equality for all people. If whites can have a hamburger and Coke in the restaurant, why can't we? And those were the questions that you asked, because we knew the only reason was you denied us the privilege because of the color of our skin. And I said in the film, we had nothing to do with the color of our skin, but that was the basis for the discrimination. They built laws, they passed laws, Jim Crow laws, and historically I can go on and on, but my point being, if you look at what's going on now in the hamburger and a Coke, sincerely, it is symbolic of we want equality for all people.
Right.
If you can have a hamburger and a Coke, I should be able to have a hamburger and a Coke. Okay.
Right.
For me, being a little girl at the time, I think the beauty of that whole process is that we were prepared to be able to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture was not just learning about Dr. King's philosophy around violence and Gandhi's philosophy around violence. That was the periphery of the methodology, as it were. But when you go to some place like New York City as a little girl, and you're able to see what's happening there, even as a child, and come and know some of the things that you were experiencing in Oklahoma, it became quite apparent that you were entitled to have it. And so I always talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we were constantly reminded that we were entitled to that. And so Joyce hands out the Constitution and said, here it is right here. Let me remind you of what it is. But then we were constantly reminded every time we went on a sit-in that you're entitled to be here. You're not doing anything wrong. This is your constitutional right. And so the hamburger and a Coke is very symbolic of what we were entitled. And now that opened up the doors to jobs and to college and to all the other opportunities, even in terms of having a Black president. And I just want to say something about that just for a moment. When you look at what's happening in society today with Mr. Floyd, and it may sound like a spiritual thing, but I feel like Mr. Floyd is like President Obama in some regard. And even the guys that end up killing Mr. Floyd. Something is happening in America that had to change. And we have a long list of guys and girls, of women and men that have given their lives. But at some point, I believe that Mr. Floyd said when he came into his lifetime, I said it sounds like a spiritual situation, that he said, I'll be the one. I'll be the one to get the attention of the world. And those guys that killed him, they'll say, you know what, I may have to take all the punishment for my actions, but I'm willing to take it because I've got to do something to change what's happening in the world today. And the same thing with President Obama. It's not by mere accident that he became the president.
So I have one last question that I want you all to ask really briefly, answer really briefly, because we ran out of time. But I just want to know, and it sort of piggybacks off of what you said, Ayanna. Does this current civil rights movement seem different to you? There's like a huge mix of people. The fact that it's a chorus of Black Lives Matter all over the world, from New Zealand to Britain to Germany. And does it feel different to you? And do you really feel like there's going to be the kind of change and transformation that we have all envisioned, that Dr. Martin Luther King envisioned, and really sort of live into the ideals promised by America?
It is more of a world movement. I'm not sure that happened the first time, and I hadn't even thought of it that way until the way you, when you put that in that phrase of all the different countries making that shift. And that's pretty phenomenal, really. It's different in that respect. So I'm thrilled that's happening. So I do think there will be change.
Ayanna, what about you?
I think that there is a lot of work still to be done. I look back on the work that I'm even doing. I started a conversational platform on social justice, and we're going to be reading a book about, how to talk about race. And we've been reading these books. And I think at that particular time, back in the 50s, there was not you were having to get people's attention. The attention for the last 60 years has been front and center. But it seems like every time you turn a page, there's more to be learned. There's more to be, people are now saying, as one friend of mine said, a guy was very unhappy about something he saw, and he had gone to Harvard Law School, white guy. And my friend, who's also an attorney, said to him, then what are you going to do about it? Are you just going to say, oh, that's such a horrible thing? So the question of what kind of contribution do I make to make life different? And I will be turning 70 in October, and never thought I'd be having these same kind of conversations. But I also know that it's my job to provide insight and guidance to young people, because some of them are just as frightened as some of the kids were back in 1958 in terms of what do I do to make a difference? And so, it's our job to still nurture and support them, but it may take, I hope it won't take another 10 years for something to happen. I think corporate America is going to force it. I think that elected officials are going to force it. And I think the children, the young people are going to say, as they say in New York, enough already. And so we got to put a period at the end of the sentence. And so I'm just doing my part.
Well, thank you for that. And before we go on to Bill, I just want to say 70, Black don't crack. You look amazing. Bill.
I became a vegan. The hamburger and the Coke. I became a vegetarian in 73 and then a vegan about 4 years ago. So.
Maybe we all should. Bill, what do you think about the change that's happening right now?
I think it's a perpetual change. I go back, I just came across a song by Bobby Darin. Those of you old enough to remember Bobby Darin. And in this song is entitled Freedom. He talks about the relationship between blacks and non-blacks. And he says, all I want to be is recognized as being me. And I would bet my life you want the same. That says it all.
Yeah. And hopefully that spirit is what's going to be the catalyst for all of the change that we all really want in our hearts. Okay. Joyce.
I think it would be appropriate for me to end with this song. I ain't gonna let nobody turn me around, turn me around, turn me around. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking to the freedom land. And that, to me, those words That's what we are looking at every day. Young people saying, I'm not going to let you turn me around. And what we started, the baton is going on, and it won't end tomorrow. We have such a long way to go. We know we're not going to solve the problems, but I am so thrilled to see that everybody is waking up. We have been complacent. We have decided in many cases that, oh, that doesn't involve me. But I am inspired because other races are seeing what's happening to African Americans. And when everybody is waking up saying, and when I say everybody, I mean the majority of the people, this is not right. What can I do to change it? So I am inspired to see those who have come on board, corporations. I'm reading in the paper, I'm reading, listening to the news. They're changing Aunt Jemima pancake. They're changing the butter, Miss Butter's syrup, all of that. And if you have everybody asking the question, what can I do to change inequality? Then we have accomplished something. And if we continue to move forward, then just maybe we won't look at each other because of the color of our skin. We'll look at our character. That's what Martin Luther King said. Yeah. Character, not the color of my skin. So that's my conclusion. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, walking to that freedom land. Thank you.
I love it, because I believe that what you do to one person, you do to everybody. And if we all really understand that we're all connected in that way, that we're all one, then there's no way that you could really hurt another person, because you'll be hurting yourself. So thank you all. This was an awesome conversation. And hey man, keep on walking and keep on talking. We're about to get our freedom in the way that we all envision it. So
that's right. And we encourage, what I'm really happy about, it's not just one group of people. You see the diversity, and the diversity really thrills me so much. Thank you.